Defiance. This is how we know what love is. Jesus Christ laid down his life for us. 1 John 3:16. Her white-knuckled hands grip the walnut bench. She can't breathe. In her peripheral, she is aware of people filing past her where she sits near the middle of the long, cavernous cathedral. She feels the steady, rising thump of her heart, its beat rushing ahead of the seconds that tick by steadily on the Schaffhausen watch that adorns the strip of exposed, masculine wrist of her companion. Go. Now. But she can't move. Go now, or it'll be over. She whispers to her companion, I want to go. Can I? He hesitates. I don't know. Go ahead if your conscience is clear. If your conscience is clear. They woke to the sound of water running, the morning ritual of the tenant above. The ceiling was thick enough to block out other human sounds, but the gurgle of rushing water ran through the common pipes of all 146 units of the downtown condominium. Outside, it was overcast. They had no plans. It was one of those gray, soundless days that made her wonder whether the world would end. Suddenly, when streets were motionless, when people were home, reading a book, making a sandwich, then just poof, all over. It was one of those days when she and her companion would gaze out the window of the rented high-rise unit on the 15th floor of prime real estate in the center of up-and-comingville, and quietly admire the unobstructed view of the lake from his black leather couch. At $2,700 a month for a mere 600 square feet, the view did not come cheap. Necessary, though, he'd told her, if one wanted to have the right image. How about we walk around the Eaton Center? Really? Won't it be crowded? It's a long weekend. Shopping wasn't usually their thing. Most days they stayed in, watched the news, took walks, listened to his Billie Holiday CDs, made love. She would cook him nice meals. She was a good cook. A gift. Last night, it had been beef bourguignon with a dollop of homemade sour cream. But it was long weekend. Easter. They needed something to pass the time. Most people have gone to the cottages. It should be fine. Also, I was thinking of visiting my old church, the one my family used to go to. Church. She had long been intrigued. The mystery behind the big wooden doors, where she sometimes saw crowds mill about on Sundays, dressed up, chatting with so many people they seemed to know, even liked. The scene always seemed foreign to her, a world she didn't know. It would be good for them to go together. It might make things different. Change things. There's a late service in the afternoon. Maybe it was a sign. Things might really change. They started with breakfast at the diner. He asked to sit by the window, winking at her, her only request whenever they went out. They ordered his favorite, pea meal bacon with eggs over easy, and a bottomless cup of coffee. Always weak, but fresh. They read the morning paper. He, the business news first, then sports. She, the editorials first, then opinions. Few words were exchanged as they sipped their fourth cup of watered-down brew. When they were done, the middle-aged waitress was well tipped. "Thanks, guys." Afterwards, they found themselves strolling at the busy shopping center. They stopped by a Venetian glass store. She liked the look of the swirly, colorful glass. He waited patiently, indulged her admiration. Next, they passed a high-end men's clothing store, Harry Rosen. He fingered a few suits and ties, tried on a jacket, admired the double stitching on the lapel. "Just looking today, thank you." They passed by an old establishment, Burke's Fine Jewelry. As he dawdled by the men's watches, she edged toward the diamond rings. Why not? She felt bold that day. She was exuberant, giddy almost, a determined kind of joy. She had never before indulged in extravagant impulses, not even for fun, but she felt different that day. He smiled faintly, his expression inscrutable. He dawdled behind her a few steps. The saleslady behind the counter engaged her immediately. "My, your hands are long and so delicate." She was in her mid-50s, genuine in her smile. "Perhaps you might try a tapered band. That would emphasize the diamond." She held out her hand to the saleslady, feeling like a kid with the day pass at an amusement park. She relished the feeling of the cool metal sliding onto her finger. The band was too large for her. "Of course, this could be sized for you, if this is the one that interests you." She thought she saw the saleslady glance at her companion, whom she felt standing silently behind her. She could see the blurred reflection of his tall, lean frame in the chrome base of the glass display case. She dared not look directly into the oval mirror to see clearly his true reflection. Instead, she reverted her gaze to the elegant woman who stood at professional attention. Maybe something a little bolder. She felt a certain carefreeness. Audacity. Of course. Perhaps you might like this eternity ring." Oh my. She was mesmerized by the glittering band of diamonds. Many couples like this one. Traditionally, each diamond represents every year of a relationship. "You've been together long?" "Almost 12 years. She felt herself blush, embarrassed at how quickly that came out. Did the woman glance past her again? Her expression seemed to change visibly. Her eyes no longer smiled, although her lips did. "Take your time." The saleslady was polite, but she did not move to offer another option from the vast display. She took another minute to admire how lovely the ring looked on her hand. She had never been one for jewelry, but she was left breathless by the way the precious gems sparkled and danced on her hand like a badge of royalty. A treasured woman, one who was loved. She felt a tightening in her chest, then quickly removed the band from her finger. "Ready to go?" From behind her. "Service starts in 30 minutes. They arrived a few minutes late. On entering, her attention first fixed on the stained glass windows from which natural light merged melodiously with the unnatural overhead. But her gaze was cut short by his hand on her back, ushering her into a pew. They took their seats near the aisle, halfway up the vast length of the sanctuary. Then the ritual began. The white-robed man carried a smoking ornament set on a long metal chain. She watched him swinging it like a pendulum. Next was the passing of the offering plate. Clink, clink. She was mystified by what she witnessed. The vast number of disparate people gathered under one roof to collectively demonstrate a common relationship with a faraway God. How strange, this public display of naive devotion by seemingly sound-minded people. Her eyes were drawn back to the stained glass rendering of the man-God Jesus, the one who apparently gave his life in atonement for the sin of all humanity. She'd heard the story many times, like a popular commercial jingle. It was so simple, so incomprehensible. Even the image itself, set high above the elaborate, self-congratulatory ceremony that was taking place, had a childlike simplicity, a one-dimensional rendering of an event of infinite meaning. It was audacious, outrageous. She could not understand it. Yet, it was the most beautiful thing she'd ever seen. By this we know love, because he laid down his life for us. Could love be as acute as this? Why had she never heard this before? This life-denying, life-giving love? But she had heard. And we ought to lay down our lives for one another. The words swirled around her, lifting her up until she was caught in the whirlwind. She no longer knew where she was and why she was there, only felt a compelling in her heart, a deep yearning. As the ceremony concluded, parishioners were invited to approach the altar to take the sacrament. What did taking the sacrament mean? She didn't know. She only knew she had to have it. She asks, louder this time, "Can I go?" He is visibly irritated by her question. He shifts around in his seat, then says finally, "You haven't been baptized, but if your conscience is clear, then go ahead. You have to decide." She grips the back of the walnut bench even tighter. The bones in her knuckles will surely pierce skin, she thinks. The lineup is dissipating. People are quietly taking their seats once more. Her companion rises slowly and moves by her, heading toward the shortening line of people who are alternately kneeling and opening their mouths for the blessed host. She feels her cheeks cramping up. She has been clamping her jaws so tight. If our hearts do not condemn us, we have confidence before God. Then, as if pushed by an unseen force, she launches up from her seat. Her eyes focus on the 3 men in white robes standing at the front of the sanctuary. She watches as one of them blesses her companion. His head is bowed, mouth open, making the sign of the cross. She had never seen him do that before. She has never seen him in a church before, or bow his head in prayer before. Never before in 12 years. Indeed, what she's witnessing seems incongruent. She moves slowly, like a fearful animal, to the priest in the center. She wants to avoid his eyes, but instead, she is drawn to them. They seem to bore into her. She holds his gaze, defiant, daring him to call her out. But he does not. His eyes accuse her silently, condemns her gall. She does not bow her head, only opens her hand. The body of Christ takes it. Whom the sun sets free, rises from her knees, is free indeed. He takes her home early. On the ride home, he asks what her plans are for the week. He asks about her mother's delicate health of late, whether she has news of the car insurance claim she made after her fender bender, whether she's enjoying the night course she's been taking at the university. He's unusually inquisitive. Then, I'll be leaving for a few weeks. She's not surprised, only surprised how oddly predictable life sometimes is. New York. She remains silent, feels her fingernails digging silently into her closed palm. He reaches for words. He is deciding on the spot what exactly he wants to tell her, half waiting for her to understand on her own, perhaps even to tell him what he wants to say. It might be an opportunity. I'm not saying I'm going to be staying, but I need to go. She is surprised by her own voice. He stares straight ahead, turns into her street. He pulls up beside a row of mailboxes and parks there instead of turning into her driveway. In silence that follows, she says again, "Go. You can go now. We're going to say goodbye." Her voice is steady, more steady than she's ever heard it. Goodbye? He needs her to articulate. For the first time, she realizes that he has never known. Not once in the last 12 years has he ever known. Never had the answers. Another voice seems to rise from her depths. "You're okay now. You don't need me anymore. You're on your way." She feels a levity, the weight on her chest, gone. He does not hide a smile. "You really think I'm on my way?" She is tired, wants to go inside. His presence is barely discernible beside her. Irrelevant. She is only aware of her closed fist. Having nothing left to say, he leans over and kisses her cheek. "Thanks," he says. "I'll see you, okay?" Her eyes are closed as she steps out of the car. Breathing deeply, she opens her hand and places the host on her tongue.